Cheevo, guys!
What up, guys? This is
Cheevo, guys!
back here again with another achievement guide. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get all of the legacy-related achievements in Madden NFL 21. Now, ultimately, what we have to do to get all of the legacy-related achievements in the game is to get to the GOAT legacy rank. To unlock this, you need to reach a legacy score of 30,000 in face of the franchise. Now, this is a little bit different compared to previous Maddens. All of the legacy achievements in previous Maddens were related to the franchise mode, versus this year they switched it up and all of the legacy related achievements are in face of the franchise. So you're actually going to have to play story mode to unlock all of these legacy related achievements. Now, if you use the simming feature here and there, the story mode is about 3 to 4 hours long, at least if you're interested in getting the GOAT rank and finishing up the story. Now, the story mode lasts up until the Super Bowl of 2027. Ultimately, you have a list of objectives that you want to check off during your career. Ultimately, the main goal is to make the Hall of Fame. As long as you make the Hall of Fame, you should get your achievement or trophy for getting the GOAT legacy rank. Now, if you just started off face of the franchise mode and you realize that you're not accumulating any type of legacy score quite yet, it's because you don't start accumulating the legacy score until you get to the NFL. So during your high school and college playing days, it's really just the story mode. So you are actually able to fast forward or simulate through any opportunities that you have available during that time, just because the results ultimately don't matter. I would try to choose the team that you get drafted to. I ended up choosing the 49ers, which really helped because I had a bunch of weapons like George Kittle, and it was really easy to get touchdowns during story mode. Now, as you're playing through the story mode, you're going to experience all types of events. Sometimes they'll ask you which players the team should pick up. Sometimes you'll have practice events. Sometimes you'll get interviewed and have press conferences. You're also going to gain upgrade points where you'll be able to upgrade the stats on your player. I want to point out that this has nothing to deal with your legacy score. This is just upgrading your players so that ultimately you can play better and score touchdowns easier during the career mode. Now, in terms of the practice sessions, I don't think that you can skip or simulate them. You are going to have to play through the practice challenges. Now, I do want to point out that you do not gain any type of legacy score, whether you do good or bad in these practice challenges, so no pressure on getting the gold ranks or anything like that. Simply just try to get yourself through the practice session, and then eventually you can go ahead and move on and continue to the next part of the career. Next, I want to talk about press conferences, interviews, and talks with your coach. The choices that you pick don't necessarily affect your legacy score. They do affect the way that the story plays out, but no pressure on picking any specific answer, because the only thing that these answers or decisions affect is your personality. So whether you're like a team player, a leader, intense, things like that. So those don't affect your legacy score, so no pressure, just pick whichever one that you feel is best. What you want to pay attention to is the optional goal on the games that you get to play. So in this instance, the optional goal is to score 4 touchdowns against the Seahawks. So most important thing is you want to make sure that you try to accomplish these optional goals while playing through the games. I recommend that you play the game until you accomplish the goal, and then you can simulate until the end of the game after you have, in this instance, got your 4 touchdowns. So let's see here. I'm going to show you guys how basically I did all of these. So first and foremost, it doesn't count if you score a touchdown on defense. So what I did is I downed it right before the red zone. That way I could get the touchdown with my offense, because otherwise it wouldn't have counted. Now, if you followed my advice and you chose the team to get drafted to and you ended up choosing the 49ers, I recommend passing it to George Kittle, just because he's highly rated in the game and he's really easy to get touchdowns with. And you're going to see a lot of these instances, I'm just straight throwing to George Kittle and making my way down the field. But also, the 49ers have a lot of other good wide receivers in the game, so, feel free to throw it to whoever's open. I also should have pointed out that the settings that I set up on Face of the Franchise was the easiest difficulty and on 1 minute quarters. So this is going to enable you to accomplish those optional objectives a lot easier because you put it on the easiest difficulty. Not only that, but it's just 1 minute quarters, so it gets the games done, a lot faster. Technically less time to get those 4 touchdowns, but I never found that I didn't have enough time to get the optional objectives done, even with 1 minute quarters on. And now that I finally got my 4 touchdowns, what I can do is go ahead and simulate the rest of the game. I'm going to have to kick it off real quick, but once I get to the play screen, I'll be able to press start and I can go ahead and sim to the end of the game. You can't sim during a play though, so you have to wait until you get to the play selection screen. There we go, jump forward to the end of the game, and that's going to simulate it. You can keep the speed on fast if you want to simulate faster, and then once that's simulated, you will end the game. You will have your optional objective completed because we did that manually and then we simmed after we got the optional objective done. And there we go, we got a 750 legacy boost for getting that optional objective done. So I got all of the legacy points available. I think ultimately, guys, I ended up playing through this whole story mode and I only missed like 2 or 3 optional objectives, and you're going to find that even after missing 2 or 3 of them, I was able to finish the story mode and have 41,000 legacy points, which is 11,000 points over what you need to get the highest legacy achievement, which is the GOAT rank for 30,000 legacy points. So if you're watching this video wondering how many optional objectives that you can miss, you can actually miss quite a few. I'd probably say 5 to 8 optional objectives that you could miss and probably still get the GOAT legacy rank. But ultimately what you want to do is make sure that you accomplish as many of those optional objectives as possible. Make sure that you know what the optional objective is going into each game and try to get that done before you simulate the game. Technically, you can get it done if you simulate it. However, it's not guaranteed because more than likely you're going to play much better than if you simulated it. But I can confirm that it does count. So if you simulated the whole game and your character did get 3 or 4 touchdowns in the simulation, that would still count. But what you want to do is do it manually because that's the only way to really actually guarantee that you accomplish that optional objective. So yeah, just know that once you accomplish those optional objectives or optional objective, that you can press start and you can go to simulate, jump forward to the end of the game, and then you don't need to, actually finish that game. You probably could technically put it on the longest quarters and then simulate, full length quarters in face of the franchise, and maybe you would accomplish enough of the optional objectives to, be able to simulate the whole career mode, but it's definitely not guaranteed and it's probably a waste of time if you try doing that. So this is the method that I would recommend. Again, just to give you guys a quick summary, you're going to be playing the story mode until the Super Bowl of 2027. The main goal in the game is to make it to the Hall of Fame. As long as you can make it to the Hall of Fame, you're going to get a ton of legacy experience points at the end. What you need to do is get 30,000 experience points at minimum to get the last achievement or trophy related to legacy ranks, which is the GOAT legacy rank for 30,000 legacy points. Besides the optional objectives, you want to make sure that you check off the objectives on your actual main objective list. For instance, winning certain games, winning the Super Bowl games, championship games, rival games, things like that. So again, that's probably why you don't want to just necessarily simulate each game in full length. You can only simulate parts of it. Once again, you only want to start simulating or simulate until the end of the game once you have finished or accomplished your optional objective. Now, as you can see, I unlocked my GOAT Legacy achievement worth 100 gamer score on week 1 of 2027, which was the last season in the game. However, I got it in the beginning of the season. There's actually a few games in this final season, so by the end of the actual 2027 season, I ended up with 41,764 legacy score, which as you can see is 11,000 more legacy score than you actually need to get that final legacy achievement. Now, after the final cutscene where I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, my final legacy score was 42,764. That's because you get, an extra 1,000 legacy score after that final cutscene. So yeah, guys, there wasn't too much guidance out there in terms of how to get these new Face of the Franchise legacy achievements and trophies. So I just wanted to make a quick video giving you guys a little overview of how I got all of the legacy achievements. Just know that you do have some leeway. You do have some room to miss out on some objectives and optional objectives. But ultimately, you do want to focus on those optional objectives. That way you can gain your legacy score much faster. Other than that, as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe.